She's trained the elite, transformed the broken, and walked the hallways of some of the most prestigious hotels in the world. But behind the champagne smiles and billion-dollar lobbies lies the truth, a truth that most people in the hospitality industry are too afraid to say out loud. Žana DeVine has spent over 25 years building empires from the inside, from the Hilton to the Four Seasons. She's seen it all, the glamour, the grind, the gut-wrenching cost of keeping guests happy at all cost. Today, we speak what happens behind a concierge desk, what luxury truly means in a world that is constantly distracted, and why great service isn't just about a smile, it's about power, precision, and pain tolerance. She's called out the fake gurus. She's trained teams that serve presidents and royalty, and she's about to drop knowledge that will change the way you do business forever. This is Žana DeVine, and you're about to learn what hospitality really takes. My name is Chef Ismael, and this is Chef Ismael's Kitchen Quest.
Yeah.
Žana, I feel so comfortable talking with you because we've known each other for quite a bit now. And so, just getting right into it as if, the entire world knows you. And I think everybody should know you and who you are and what you're about. But I know who you are, but would you be able to give me a rundown of who Žana and what Žana Hospitality is all about?
Yeah, sure. First of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited for this conversation because every time when we off camera or on camera talk, I feel like magic always happens and there's such great energy exchange and so many synergies because we very similarly look at the world of hospitality. Obviously, your baby is in the back and mine is in the front. But, we really share the passion and the love for hospitality, and we have a very similar mindset when it comes to just executing our craft. And so for that, I thank you. I'm very blessed to be here, and I feel very, very grateful. So thank you for inviting me. And so my name is Žana, and who I am an entrepreneur that is originally from Germany. My dad was Hungarian, my mom was Serbian, and I literally was born into the world of hospitality. My dad was a chef. My mom ran a housekeeping team at a medium-sized hotel. And so, very early on in my life, I was exposed to hospitality, and if it wasn't at the restaurant with dad, it wasn't at the hotel with mom, it was at home with my parents, because my parents were very organized and very detail-oriented when it comes to cleaning and being very organized at home. Everything had its space and its place. So, early on, I really learned how detail really does matter. And then when I watched my parents obviously serve guests in their actual work environment, I felt immediately that this is something I definitely want to tap into too when I'm growing up. And so I did. I started many, many, many moons ago. Obviously, like everybody else, I got educated. I got a bachelor's degree and a master's degree, both in hotel management. And I lived in 7 different countries, and literally hospitality was always my first lover. It kind of followed me everywhere I went, and I followed it, and we never lost sight of each other. And even though some other players entered the scene, this part of me never got tired of hospitality. And I worked in many upscale places, really beautiful 5-star hotels and very, very beautiful resorts and casinos and restaurants. And at one point in my career, I really discovered the love for fine dining, where those details that we just talked about matter the most, right? And so it's small things, it's really the small things. How does an establishment make you feel when you enter? What's the smell? What's the scent? How does it make you feel when somebody really anywhere in the staff just smiles at you, like walking around the hotel, and no matter what staff you're encountering with, they're all like happy, they have a smile on their face. And to be quite honest with you, it's very rare these days, right? But when I got educated, when I had my mentors in hospitality, they embedded it in me that the minute I stepped foot into the hotel or into the restaurant, I really have to learn how to leave my private life behind for that time being in the workspace, because guests are not there to feel negativity. They're really there for you to uplift them. And so when it was time for me to create my own business, those were really the pillars that I integrated into my own business, because that's really important to me. But because I've been in almost every position that one in hospitality can be, literally from being a dishwasher, working, cleaning rooms, being a concierge, being in sales, being in banquets, and so on and so on and so on. I understand also how it feels to be just a regular employee, right? And to really be somebody's worker, versus when I developed and when my career got different, and when I entered different levels of my career, I had privilege to be actually on the other side. And so for me, it's also very important not only to educate people on how we're treating our guests, but also educate upper mid management and investors on how are we really treating our current employees, and what can we really make better to improve their life. Meaning that if they crave education, can we offer education, right? If they need tools to work, are we providing tools for them to be better on the floor? If they need verbal encouragement, are we giving it to them? If they need maybe an extra hand because they don't know really how to drive sales for themselves, because they either are a waiter or they are in sales where they actually need to sell as many hotel rooms, for instance, how do we get them to understand the craft of selling? And so I'm saying all of this to say that I really thought about what I wanted my own business to be. And because I'm such a unique unicorn in this niche, it was very challenging for me to break through, because people would tell me, why do I need to hire you? Like, why do we need to hire you when we have managers? And so for a while I felt like, man, is this something I should really be doing? Like, it seems like I'm not needed. But the more I stuck to my grounds and my faith, and knowing that what I have to offer really does help and it's needed, the more stuff started to surface. And so now I'm getting to the point where I'm having conversations with people that actually said at the beginning, we really don't need you, that are saying now, hey, remember that call that we had many, many years ago? I actually changed my mind. And it's really not about right or wrong. It's just really about helping everybody to be just more successful. Everybody who really wants to learn is absolutely teachable, in my opinion. And, we only have as good staff as we have leaders. So if you as a leader, if you're really not involved, or if you're not willing to put in the effort or the investment for your staff, then it's going to be very challenging for you, because people just don't show up anymore for people. People these days need something in return. They need to feel safe. They need to feel heard. They need to feel respected and valued. And if you are not in that mind frame, then it's going to be very challenging to keep a good team, because listen, people come and go. That's not the issue. It's never been the issue in hospitality. It's always been a high turnover rate, in a sense, because people move on one position to the other. They move from one location to the other. They get another job offer at the same chain of a hotel, and so on and so on. And life happens to everybody. But once you're really happy in a space, you don't leave so quick, because you have the possibility to work yourself up on the ladder. And so if that's given to you, why do you need to leave necessarily? Right? So I'm sorry I swing all the way to the left with the question, but I hope I
Fine.
answered
Yeah.
the core what you
No, you did.
asked.
So you mentioned that you worked at many luxury hotels.
Mhm.
I know the brands that you worked at, whether they were from Hilton, the Four Seasons, Intercontinental.
Mhm.
What's something about the high-end hospitality that people don't ever see?
Real quick, if you're enjoying this conversation and you want more behind the scenes stories of the hospitality industry, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It's free, it'll help us grow, and trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming up next. Now back to the conversation.
I think you mean people as guests, meaning
Yeah.
that the people we're talking about, the
Yeah,
guests. I
yeah,
think
I
what
guess
they
guests
really
and people who don't really know about what luxury, uh, a luxury stay maybe at the Four Seasons is all about.
Mhm. I think what they really don't see is how flawlessly things are being executed in front of the house, meaning, on the floor, at the reception, at the concierge desk, like everything that is for the guests to see. And they don't really see what's happening in the back, like the flawless procedures that are really all standards. There's so many procedures that these really high-end chains follow and teach their staff, that behind the scenes, there's so much happening. But in front of the scene, people don't see it because it's like, everybody knows their cue. Everybody understands what needs to happen at a certain time. And I think that's one big thing that people don't get to see at all, what's really happening in the back, because it's really being taught to not show that in the front. Just for instance, if a guest makes you feel uncomfortable or irritates you, it doesn't make you feel good the way they speak to you, for instance, right? You will never see in those type of hotels somebody going off or having an attitude or rolling their eyes or having any kind of negative face expression whatsoever. They just simply take it for their moment, and then they call the appropriate person that can handle situations like that. But you won't see them, argue or talk back, or maybe go to another employee in that moment, talking, whispering, noticeably that the guest will see that. Will they talk about it? Yeah, absolutely. But will they do it rather in the back office or at the employee lounge? Yes, because it's being taught like that. It's not being taught for you to undermine your feelings as a human, but it is being taught that you are at the end representing the establishment. And if you cannot get your attitude together, you won't be staying there for long, because they're looking for a specific type of attitude. They're looking for a specific type of personality that can at times take heat. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying the policy of those homes is simply for you to understand that the guest in this moment is the one that, in a sense, has the upper hand. And will there be consequences maybe for a guest that is disrespectful? Absolutely. But will those be executed by somebody in the appropriate position, with the appropriate language, with the appropriate attitude? Yes. And so this is why people want to climb up the ladder in establishments like that, because this is just another responsibility that you don't necessarily have to deal with when you're just, let's just say, a person that just is hired to work the reception.
So I wanted to ask you this question later on in the interview, but you brought up a good point, or a good segue into this, because you had mentioned that the guest is, I guess, in a sense, that the customer's pretty much always right. So in that instance, when a customer is berating or a guest is berating an employee, and we, as in the hospitality industry, understand that the customer isn't always right, but
Mhm.
we've been trained to a point where, yes, they're not always right, but we give them what they want.
Mhm.
So because the customer is not always right, actually, well, some say that the customer is not always right. Do you agree or disagree, and why? And how did you, I guess, can you give me an example of how, maybe you or someone else that you witnessed handled the situation appropriately?
Mhm. So, um, m- honestly, my thing is, to me, it barely really happened in my entire career where I had a situation like that, where I felt the guest was wrong. Because to me, my mindset is already, I'm going already into my everyday understanding that I am there to serve the guest that I'm interacting with for that day. And it could be in any position. Doesn't matter if I'm a waiter, doesn't matter if I work the reception, if I work the spa, if I work in the golf shop, it doesn't matter where I necessarily am placed. I understand already from my own mindset that I am there to serve them. So if they were to be coming across to me that would maybe hurt my feelings, or is, maybe called disrespectful, I would still understand how to treat that situation without disrespecting anybody back, right? But that's because I understand what this really means to work for a hotel chain like that. For me, working for this chain was always more worth to have that on my resume instead of having a necessarily unnecessarily argument to prove that I was treated wrong, if that makes any sense. But that's my own personal point of view. But really, it's being taught to you this way also, because in the end, if we don't have guests, we won't have a job. So is the statement right that the guest is always right or wrong? I don't know, because if they're wrong and we tell them they're wrong, will we have guests? Is one question. But again, I'm not saying that there's no consequences or that there's no rules or boundaries to any of that. Like obviously, if somebody is disrespecting staff and is not behaving appropriately towards staff, and it could be in any kind of matter. It could be that they're getting too much of drinking on in the bar or in the lounge, and certain things are happening in that way where some waitresses or some cocktail waitresses or some waiters feel a little bit like, oh, this is a little, I don't really like that. Or it could be the other way where people get irate, people have, raised their voice or get angry, right? But there is ways how to handle those situations. Now, are they being taught to you in specific types of way, no matter what position you enter? No. But will they be taught to you when you take on a management position? Yes. And this is exactly why there's a difference between being a manager and not being a manager, because you have different trainings. At least that's at least how I learned it when it was my time to learn these things. I don't know how it's today, but I certainly implement this in my own business, because if I am hiring you as my manager, obviously I'm going to give you more responsibility than somebody that I hire on hourly basis, right? And so to me, in my world, I make sure that my guests feel that they are the most important person that I'm interacting with that day. But as well as my other coworkers are important. Like nobody is less important than another person. They just have different roles when we interact with them.
There was a chef. I think you might know him, Chef Marco Pierre White. And he super talented chef. But there was one interview he had done, I think back in the 80s, or yeah, back in the 80s, where I guess he had kicked out a guest because they were being completely rude to his staff.
Mm-hmm.
And he said essentially, you are in my home. You're not going to treat my staff, that way. And you wouldn't want me to come into your home and treat your family that way.
Right.
So there's a certain limit that I guess a company can take, right? How much, they can take essentially.
Mm-hmm.
In my personal instance, I've had a customer where you couldn't make them happy. Our guest wasn't happy for anything that we did. And
Mm-hmm.
that's partly due to because they wanted either a comp or some sort of like, um, some sort of discount, free dessert, free drink, whatever it is, and it got to a point where my brother, who was a general manager at the time, had actually asked the guests, hey, unfortunately, we won't be able to serve you anymore because it seems like we're not able to handle, that we're not able to, I guess take care of you the way you'd
Yeah.
like to take care of you. And it seems like it's a continuous thing. And she was a regular at the restaurant. And she was the only one who really gave us a hard time. So at that point, we kind of stopped, giving her the service that she, I guess, expected from us.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so, but I've never encountered a guest that difficult in my life to a point where we actually had to refuse service because,
Mm-hmm.
of how difficult it was. Do you think, well, I mean, again, this is Marco's restaurant, right? He can do whatever he wants. But
Sure.
The fact that he was able to kick someone out because of the way they were acting and then
Mhm.
maintain his restaurant's popularity. Why do you think that was?
Because I mean, fundamentally, he wanted to protect his own reputation of just being respectful to human beings in general. I think that's one thing, and it's not okay. And number two, obviously he sees his staff very highly. He very values and respects his own staff. I mean, most of them were trained personally by him, or he touched most of them with his own trainings and spoke his own expectations. And I want to assume that everybody followed his expectations also. And so I think that's a nice fair given. If you expect me to show up every day for you and give you my all, and I am giving you my all, and I am treating all your guests with respect and kindness, and I am bringing in revenue, then I am expecting in return for you as my boss to have my back too when I'm being unfairly treated. When you know that I usually have a good track record and you've seen me work and you hired me and you've never experienced anything like that with me before, then the expectation goes both ways. It doesn't matter if you're the employee or if you're the one that gives the job. It's about respect, right? It's about really respecting each other's craft, because he's respecting his staff enough to understand that without his staff, his restaurant wouldn't work. And they understand that without him being who he is, they would never be as busy as they are. Fundamentally, the money that they're making in that restaurant would never be the same if they would not work for him. So it's a nice fair take and give, like I respect you, but you also respect me. And I think it's a wonderful thing. I think it's a great thing. I can only imagine how that person felt in that moment, having his boss or her boss step up like that, like show up like that, like level up, to be like, wow, this is what they see in me. Like, I'm valuable to this team. Like, I matter so much that even a guest would be turned down for me because I was not treated right. And I think it's really everybody's own house rules that matter. And either you're okay with those or you're not, right? But I think in this case, everybody understands the house rules that everybody should be treated with respect and kindness. And if that's not towards our staff, then I'm so sorry, we have to cut cords with you, because first of all, we don't need you in general. But then also what we don't need is this attitude, is this energy. This is not what our guests are about. This is not how we treat each other here. So, I mean, I also have seen places where there was no consequences at all for any guests and people were treated really badly. So it really just depends on the person's mindset that is in control or in charge of such decision too.
So I kind of want to flip it now from negative to positive.
Okay.
um, I want to know what the most mind-blowing guest experience you've ever designed or witnessed for a guest.
The most what? I'm so sorry, I couldn't catch the last part.
What's the most mind-blowing guest experience you've ever designed or witnessed for a guest?
I think mind-blowing is always to me when guests are going really out of their way to actually really give their employees certain things, or like the team in general, or when the team just gets out like a little envelope, for like holidays or whatever, for knowing that it's coming from that guest because they really appreciate the whole team. I think that's always mind-blowing to me, where people really take the extra mile. Like I remember I've been a part of this hotel, and this one guest, he would come all the time, right? And every Christmas and every Easter and every big holiday that, in that time frame was going on, he would always make sure to bring everybody in the group a little gifting, a little small gifting. Everybody would get the same. I mean, it was kind of like male and female geared, but it had the same value, it had the same meaning. And I always thought that's so thoughtful. You know what I mean? Like, it's really thoughtful when that happens, and okay, we are also being taught to not receive gifts or not receive certain things from our guests also, that's really big actually. But if it's for the whole team and your manager hands it out to you, I think that's a really nice it's a nice gesture, I feel like this is when you really feel like, oh my God, I'm being seen, like I matter. Again, I think what people are really after is just wanting to belong, just wanting to belong to a team where it feels like you're not being left out with any information. If it's concerning you, your schedule, your team, your other coworkers, you all are on the same page and everybody gets the same treatment, the same information, the same rewards. Everybody has the same chance, and it's kind of like up to you how much you want to put in. You know what I mean? But if you collectively put in good things and you get good rewards back, that's wonderful. I think it gives the team such a feeling of we did it, we achieved it together.
Those are the best guests,
Right?
when they really like you become a part of their life essentially. And and I've seen this multiple times over at Disneyland, when I used to work there, where guests would bring, said gifts to a bartender because they were their exclusive bartender.
Yeah.
They only wanted drinks from that specific bartender.
Yeah.
And number eight, first of all, they would give big tips, to that bartender. And then when it came down to Christmas and stuff like that, it was cool because then I got to see them switch up the what was it called? They would give each other gifts, right? So it wasn't just one person receiving; it was the other person. The guest would receive a gift as well,
Right.
and it was good ambiance and good mutual respect and genuine friendship between the both of them.
Yeah.
And I thought it was always cool to see something like that, because now it shows that the bartenders aren't just collecting the cash. It also shows that they're creating relationships that are going to last a lifetime, whether they're working there or not. And it's good to see that. So
Yeah.
I kind of want to go into hospitality secrets and hacks. So if a small restaurant or a boutique hotel wants to deliver 5-star service on a budget, what's the number one hack you tell them?
Attentiveness. Let's teach them attentiveness. Like being attentive is like the biggest thing you can teach your staff on no budget at all. Help them understand how to see things that they don't see on their own. Meaning, when they walk inside the kitchen or they're coming out of the kitchen, both ways, never go empty-handed. That's one thing. There's always something to take out. There's always something to bring back. Always. If you have time, do pre-work, like polish glasses, polish silverware, do some roll-ups, do some napkins, refill sugar, refill salt, clean sugar, clean pepper meals, refill them. Go through your menu, wipe them down nicely. If you have nothing else to do, go around your restaurant, wipe down the chairs from crumbs, your banquets, iron a tablecloth with the nice crease. There is always something to do. Like it's never boring, really. It's never boring, So that will be one thing I would definitely teach people. And cross training. If you're literally on the budget, cross train your staff, which I'm not saying to constantly do that. But if you happen to have somebody that you train on front of the house, being able to be a waiter, the same way they're able to be a host. Let's just take those two, those two positions, Why not? If a host gets sick all of a sudden, now I can put them as my waiter. Or if I have no waiter, but I have my host that knows everything on my menu, I can use her.
Yeah, that's definitely a great way to save cash, and
Yeah.
on top of that, the employee is going to definitely gain that experience as well, especially if they want to pursue the hospitality industry. So,
Mm-hmm.
what's a tiny change that can instantly double a customer's satisfaction?
Smiling, being friendly, again, being attentive. Like hospitality is not about you being an order taker. hospitality really is about that you understand how people move, what guests are requiring without them asking you. Like, it's all about a really good memory. Like, a really good waiter or a really good waitress has an excellent memory, in all honesty. And it's really a lot to remember. It's a lot of multitasking in your mind, because everything on the floor is strategy. Everything. How you place out your courses. If you have a table and they have 5 courses, you need to know in your mind, when I fire the next course, when do I mark my table for the next upcoming course? When do I do that? How do I synchronize that everybody at the table is at the same pace? You can't fire too fast. You can't fire too long. Like, when is the right time to fire your next course, right? Because you have to stay on cue. You don't want to rush them, so you need to be able to check in with your table too. You have to have that report already, where you just with one person, preferably always the person that orders wine would be my suggestion, if there is wine ordering. If not, the person that usually speaks the first word at the table. You can tell. They're like, okay. They're like in charge of the group, you know? So always find that one person within your own group that you kind of like always have that eye contact, or that nice different friendliness of, like, where you can slowly go behind their shoulder, make yourself noticeable in a calm way of like, are you guys ready? Is your table ready? I would, how do you feel? Like, always make them feel it's all about them, because it is all about them. It's not about that you want to rush them through your courses because you want to get home. It's about them taking their time, right? But everything has its order. Everything has a place. Everything has a time when it's happening. And so, yeah, that's one of the biggest things, when people really don't have to ask for anything, especially if you remember their faces with their names, because there's always regulars that come back to a place. When you see those, you learn their names. You go and ask your host, or if it's a good functioning place, the host will already tell you before you step to your table, because you need to address them with their name. It's a nice gesture. That's real hospitality to me. When you step to a table and you greet your guests with their name, but they never seen you in your life. How is that even possible? It's all about communication behind the scenes. Remember what we talked about at the beginning? This is exactly that. This is exactly that, where nobody knows really how this happens, but it's happening because there's procedures for all of that. There's rules, there's guidelines, there's standards. How do we do and execute certain things? Everything in hospitality has a rule. Everything has a rule. you know, and those rules just need to be taught and learned. But once you know them, the at least basis, you can work with those rules anywhere in the world because they don't change. Like true international hospitality doesn't change. It always stays the same, and foodies and winies and people that travel, they know these rules.
You're absolutely right. I mean, I've traveled to a lot of places, and
Yeah.
you know, honestly, like to me, the best customer service is someone just being nice. Um,
Right.
because it honestly, because I'm I'm nice by nature. I like to just be, hey, like, hey, how you guys doing? Like blah blah.
Yeah.
And I like to have that same respect, as well, because if I'm giving out that, that hey, thank you so much, guys, blah blah. I appreciate you doing this for me. But then I just
Right.
get like, yeah, sure, or like that kind of ruins everything for me because I'm trying to, I guess, make it more tolerable.
Sure.
I flew out to we have flown out to Florida, and the airline I'm not going to name the airline, but the airline was a pretty big named airline, and their attitude from the beginning of checking in your bag to the captain to everyone else. And for those wondering, it's not Spirit, okay? But from everything else, like the host is there, it just seemed so like off, and I think part of that has to
Mm.
do with the culture of the team. The culture of your
Mhm.
the company itself. And so, with that being said, um, What's the worst customer service mistake that even major brands keep making?
I think a really big mistake that so many are making is literally not being consequent enough, not being consistent enough, and not having clear communication in the expectation of the person that is being hired. Like you cannot expect of me to read your mind. Like I need clear directions on what it really is that you're asking me and what your expectation on me is, either for this day, for this week, for this month, for this quarter, for this year, whatever. Give me clear guidelines, what you expect me to deliver. And then I can tell you this is something I'm able to do, or this is something I'm not able to do. And then we can see if we can still find together. But I think a lot of times we just really go by a resume versus by actually having a real, authentic, transparent conversation with somebody and just understanding who they are as humans. Like, I'm not saying a nice resume is not worth something. It absolutely is. But even with a nice resume, I still like to ask personal questions of understanding how this human is really functioning. And because I am from the industry, I will throw stuff in that I would like this person right then and there to answer. You know, like how would you act if this and this and this and this would happen right now? How would you act? Or all of a sudden, I would be the one in the interview getting really rude a little bit just to see how they would react. Because what if that happens to you on the floor? What's your first reaction? And I'm not saying what's going to happen, because that's the thing. Those situations are never being told to you. When you enter work today at 3 p.m., somebody's going to be rude to you. No, it happens on the fly. You know, it happens spontaneously, and you need to spontaneously understand how you correctly react, right? And for me, reading off a resume does not tell me how the person really is. Who is this person in front of me? Who is this human? What are their hobbies? What are they like to do? What are they into? Do they have children? What do they do like to do with their like, with so many personal questions, you can find already out what a human really is about. You know what I mean? And me, I'm really good at people knowledge. So I also can tell if somebody's just telling me because it sounds nice. Because if that vibrational energy doesn't match what I'm hearing, my body will tell me, yeah, sounds nice, but that's cute. Nice try. You know? And then I will come with a technical question of like geared towards their position. Okay, you want to be a cocktail waitress. Talk to me about vodka. What do you know about vodka? What do you know about tequila? What do you know about mixed cocktails? How would you grab ice? If you make like a nice ice drink, how would you grab the ice? With your hand, with a cup, with a glass cup? How would you grab it? Like, just to see if the bases are there, that they're actually presenting on the resume to be there. Because if they are, they know they're going to tell me the right answer. I don't have to see it on a resume. I'll find the answer out right then and there when I ask you towards your job geared questions. But if you're not from the industry and you're trying to have an interview and you're trying to fill a position, then it's going to be tricky for you, because then you will simply just go by your resume because it looks good, right? And oh, it matches all the criteria. Okay, well, that's great. This must be a perfect fit.
Yeah, I mean, you don't always want to go with the resume, right? And you're absolutely right. I couldn't agree with you more, because I've had applicants walk to my restaurant and ask for a job, and they've
Mhm.
worked at the French Laundry, they've worked at let's say Noma or whatever. Right? I'm not actually I've never encountered anybody who worked at Noma, but the French Laundry for sure. But they came off a little rude, or a little like kind of like, on a high horse, and I'm just like,
Mhm.
I'm looking out for the culture of my team, not the resume and the experience, because
Right.
like the experience can be taught to you, but personality has to be within you already. And so if you don't have the personality, then your experience means nothing to me. Because at the end of the day, I'm not trying to sit in my office with HR because you're having an issue with my team.
Right.
And so I'd
Or
rather,
against.
you know, right?
Right.
So I'd rather just, just let that go and just leave it alone and move forward from there. Um,
Yeah.
so I want to get into social media and hospitality because I'm assuming even on your social media accounts, whether
Mhm.
it's TikTok or Instagram, or even for me, even on YouTube, um,
Mhm.
my feed is usually all about restaurants. It's all about hotels. It's all about
Yeah.
travel and and all these things, right? And so um we're essentially in an age where a viral TikTok, a viral Instagram post, a viral short on YouTube can make or break a hotel or even a restaurant. So
Mhm.
how should a hospitality business adapt to this new reality?
I think they should. I mean, it's a great way of, promoting your establishment. I think it's a great way of free PR for yourself. I mean, is it free? No, because you have to hire somebody to do that. So that's not the free part, right? But I think it's worth, I really think it's worth. And I think it makes like a nice picture on the overall idea. You know what I mean? I mean, I tell you honestly, will always remain a fan of word of mouth because I think that's the most valuable PR one can get or one can give, really, from word to word, from mouth to mouth, literally, because it has the most power. You know what I mean? Like if you really step to somebody and you speak to somebody about your own experience, they can feel your energy, or they can feel your furiousness, or they can feel your happiness, they can feel your excitement. But social media kind of takes it a little bit away. Is it somewhat necessary to stay with the time? I would agree it is necessary. Is it the main priority? No, but if you have social media or a website, please update it because listen, like I mean, you cannot update your website once a year and then your amenities change. Like if I go on your website now and it tells me your pool is open from then and then I come to your hotel because of the pool or because of the jacuzzi or because of the tennis court or whatever, and I come there and then it's like, oh, sorry, it's under construction. Wait, what? I just booked 3 days ago. There is no information whatsoever that this is happening. That to me turns into false advertisement, straight up. And it gives me right away a bad taste. I already enter now my trip into this place with like a little of that part I didn't like. So I'm saying if you incorporate it with your brand, be updated about it, like stay with it. Like don't just have one post and never post again. Like if you do decide to have an Instagram account, stay with it. If all of a sudden stuff doesn't work, figure something else out, put it on hold, take it away or something, but don't do half things. You know what I mean? Especially, yeah, especially updating information. I think that's really huge. But for advertisement, when there's stuff happening, when there's functions, that's a great way of using social media because you can go crazy on it. You can create like little shorts and videos and all those little tricks and mix and whatever. And, it could be very helpful. But is it a full-time gig? Is it really that needs responsibility and it needs attentiveness on daily, weekly basis? Yes. So if you're not planning on putting in this work, then maybe just consider not having it at all. Because listen, to me, would it make or break a hotel or a restaurant? No. I truly don't believe that. I truly don't believe if a good restaurant has no social media whatsoever except for a website, that it will not make it. I don't believe that because word of mouth is so powerful and it always be powerful. So people will talk, and if you don't have a social media account, somebody that comes to the place has one. So you'll be known somehow. You know what I mean?
Those are great points. So you brought you mentioned the fact that if you don't have a social media account, the
Right.
someone who walks in your restaurant almost always does,
Yeah.
right? What's your take on influencer culture in hospitality? And are they a blessing or do you believe they are a burden?
If they speak truth, I think they're a blessing. If they know what they're speaking about, I think they're a blessing. But if they have no idea what they're speaking about, then I think it could be really a distraction, and it could really be kind of like negatively too. Because again, if you understand what you're talking about, and this counts for anything and everything, you know, feel free to speak on anything that you want to talk on, but please make sure that you have the knowledge that comes with it to spread information, right? So I feel like if an influencer, um, let's just say a supermodel, right? That really has nothing to do with the world of hospitality other than just going to these places to enjoy eating and enjoy sleeping in a nice hotel, but has no idea about the backstory of what really goes into running a day like that, right? In the kitchen or in front of the house or running a hotel a whole day. Now sits there and talks about certain things that the person has no idea about. I think it would makes no sense to me at all. But if the person maybe owns a restaurant and now they're an influencer because this is really what they do, then I think it'd be a great thing. I think it really depends on each individual situation. But fundamentally, I'll say if the information is being shared truthful and transparent, then yes, share it.
I couldn't agree with you again more with knowing what you're talking about. There's so many there's so many influencers that I've seen where I you just know that they're talking out of their behind. Um
Right.
and you just
Yeah.
I'm just like really like you're calling yourself a food influencer, but you're tasting a lemon pepper wing and you're telling me it tastes a little lemony and a little bit of peppery, like, and just a tad bit of chickeny, right?
Right.
Why? I don't even understand why I even sat there and watched it in the first place. So I immediately just took it off because I'm just like,
Yeah.
and this was one of, this is an influencer that I saw on, because he had gone to the Food and Wine Festival this year, and he was explaining to I guess I was watching it because I was like, well, I just want to see what they have. That way, if anything piques my interest, I'm definitely going to try it.
Sure.
And a couple of things did pique my interest, but when he said that, I was like, I'm done watching this guy. I couldn't stand listening to someone explain to me what a lemon pepper chicken or lemon pepper wing tastes like. Um, and so,
Right.
sorry about my rant, but
No,
um,
I get it. I totally understand.
so with that being said, though, um, you've essentially trained elite teams across the world. How do you teach a staff to create an Instagrammable moment without it being without it being feeling having a feeling of being forced? Or let me just rephrase that question again one more time. I'm sorry. Cut. um, you've trained elite teams across the world. How do you teach a staff to create Instagrammable moments without it being forced?
I think it's, every moment, every encounter with any guest could be really a one of a lifetime opportunity and a memorable experience, right? I think it really starts with training somebody that they understand the mindset and what hospitality truly really is about. You know what I mean? Because it's really not those big things. It's really those small gestures that we do, like for instance, when we are a waiter and we have several tables and somebody in our station from our tables gets up and uses the bathroom and they just drop the napkin, on the chair or on the table. You just go and refold the napkin nicely and you put it to the side. Like those are nice, small, kind gestures that are priceless. You know what I mean? Or like having really somebody on the door, opening and closing the door when guests are coming and going. It's small details. Or for instance, I know of this one amazing restaurant, and it's like literally when it's cold outside, they take the coats that the guests put up to the coat room while they're having dinner and they warm it up by the fireplace to then put it on a guest. I mean, that's very special. It's those small but also big gestures that would actually make a guest feel like this was amazing. Like I will never forget this experience. How can you forget an experience when they warm up your jacket by the fireplace before you go out into the cold? How can you forget about that? It's impossible. Or how can you forget when a nice, beautiful, amazing cocktail is being prepared in front of you? Where they take off the gouache and a bunch of smoke comes out that smells like bacon and like rusty wood. And like, how can you forget such experience? You know what I mean? And it's really about that. It's really teaching your staff to understand how special it is when you're simply really understanding what it means to go the extra mile for your guest. You know, not just do what they ask, not just bring what they ask, not just take an order, but also go the extra mile. You know, like they will appreciate that. They will remember you for that. I know this from my own career being a waiter, you know, that when I did those things, people literally waited for me, my section to be free, to be seated in my section. Literally waited and said, no, we want to sit with her. But she has no tables. It might be an hour wait. That's okay. We'll wait. You know, and it's really those gestures that matter the most, not because you're trying too hard to impress, but because that's really who you are as a person in this job. You know, and like you said, this is really difficult to teach. Like either you have that inside of you and you really enjoy that, or you just don't. You know, I can teach anybody anything that is teachable and willing to learn, but I cannot teach you to be kind inside. I can't. That's either you have it or you don't. You know, and listen, this industry is not for everybody. I want to make this very known. This is not for everybody. This is not just, oh, I'm going to make a quick paycheck, which you can, but this is not really what this is about, because this is so much deeper. It's so much deeper. You know, this is about humans that come to you with a long face. And now you, the entertainer of the table, or the entertainer from the reception desk, or the concierge, or wherever you are, is actually being called to entertain and to make the long face go away. That's I mean, you need to be a therapist. You need to be sometimes, you know, a mom and a dad and a friend and a professional and a teacher and a mentor, and like you so many things at one time. And you need to know when you go in and when you back up, and when it's enough and when it's not. And you need to understand how body language with your guest works too. You know, you can tell so much from body language. So much when a person is sitting at the table, you know, or a group of people sitting at the bar, you can tell from a body language what they need or what they don't need. If they want to have that little small talk, professional small talk, or if they don't, you know. But I think with time, all of this is really teachable. This is not just one day at the job. This, you know,
Yeah, you really
this
have
is
to have
years.
yeah, you really have to have a passion for it. You
Yeah,
know, you really have to
yeah,
love doing what you're doing in order to even give that level of service.
right.
And I mean, when you reach that level of service, the pay gets really nice. And it's essentially an incentive for people to continue to create that level of service. Now, you
Hmm.
mentioned, you know, human interaction, right? And so forth. And I kind of want to get into the future of hospitality because a couple days ago I saw a video of a Chinese restaurant, and this restaurant had essentially AI robots um, serving the tables. What do you think? Actually, let me rephrase this. Let me go back on this one because I think I'm going to ask you that one after this one. So essentially, AI is taking over customer service, and it seems to me it is out in China because they're kind of replacing their servers. Maybe it was just in this instance this restaurant, but also there's another restaurant out in LA where it's there's an automated restaurant where these robots are cooking for you as well. And that not only provides consistency, but also you're cutting costs, right?
Hmm.
Will luxury hospitality ever go fully digital, or do you think people will still crave the human connection?
That's a great question. I mean, I don't know, in all honesty. I have no idea. What I do know is that everybody at one point will be using AI for their business on one way or another. That's a fact. That's unreversible. We're already too far in. That's a fact. Do I think it's a good idea? I think so. It's helpful. It's definitely helpful because it can be used in many aspects of making our life easier. Now, if I were to ask the question of, do I think it would makes sense because of cost cutting and efficiency and consistency to have robots versus humans cooking for us or serving us? No, I don't believe that at all. And the reason why I don't believe that is because AI might be very smart and fast in executing information, but it will never have what the human body is designed to have, which is personality, soul, and heart. Right. And so these are the three key points of true hospitality that we need to keep. In fact, this is exactly what we need to go back to. And I'm not trying to go back in time. I'm just trying to say that this will be something that should be revised again and relived again, because this is when we feel acknowledged, when we feel valued, is when another human being actually sees us and hears us and acknowledges us and respects us and verbally tells us that we did a good job, or guests are verbally telling us, this was such a nice day. Thank you so much. You made this so much more better. It's unreplaceable to hear that from AI or a robot. You can't compare those two. And I don't really always like to compare those two, because in my world, I wish that the two can remain both existing, living happily after, where each part does the thing that they do best. Let robots do heavy things, like if, for God forbid, there's a fire somewhere, yeah, let's send AI robots to there. So no human will get hurt. That's a great way of helping humanity. But if there is maybe a restaurant or a hotel or a casino, let people do that, because there's many people in this world that actually love doing what they're doing. There's many GMs, many waiters, many hostesses, many busboys, food runners, and on and on and on and on. They actually really love what they do, you know? So why take something away from humanity that they actually enjoy, which others get to enjoy too?
So there's two things I did want to mention to you. Number one was the personality aspect of AI.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes I like to have conversations with AI, right? Whether it's hospitality industry, whether it's soccer, and or just anything in general of like what's going on, in the world. And when I speak to AI, or to Chat GPT and GPT, right? Specifically, when I speak to it, I literally speak to it to, just have it. It's faster for me to ask questions when I'm speaking rather than typing it,
Yeah.
and it's nicer, right, to be able to talk to something like that, rather than typing it out. But when I spoke to it, it responds back to me by speaking as well.
Mm-hmm.
And what kind of freaked me out was the usage of the of words, if you want to call them that, of like or using so, or like kind of essentially, it's starting to feel more human
Mm-hmm.
and robot. And
Mm-hmm.
so the personality aspect of the of AI, I think they're really trying to push or to program it, even though it's artificial. We as humans, I think we as humans would, our brain would kind of trick us into thinking that we are speaking to an actual human, or
Mm-hmm.
you know what I'm saying? Like kind of, and we start to have feelings for, having this AI conversation or having conversation with AI.
Mm-hmm.
Now, with that being said, I had a conversation with a previous podcast guest that I had, Andre Natera from Chef's PSA, and he was telling me that he in the future, that AI right now at this very moment is as it can only get better from this point on. Right now it sucks compared to what it's going to look like in 20 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so with that being said, if AI does take over the hospitality industry, and I don't disagree with him on this, and I think that he makes a valid point in terms of what he had said, but he had said if AI does take over the hospitality industry,
Mm-hmm.
then human restaurants and AI and artificial intelligence restaurants
Mm-hmm.
will be kind of like a thing, right? Where people will maybe pay a little more extra to have that human interaction versus the AI where you already expect a certain level of excellence, right? There's a restaurant out in Japan where they only hire people who have kind of like a form of dementia, or even having a form of what was it called, Alzheimer's,
Okay.
where the guests expect, they understandably expect errors to happen, right? Sometimes they'll order one thing but they'll get a whole completely different meal, and that's part of the experience, because not only are they supporting those who are wanting to be part of this hospitality, I guess, sector,
Mm-hmm.
but it also, um, I guess, funds the lifestyle, and it gives, those the employees, I guess, if you want to call them that, um, a sense of purpose, right? Of that they are feeling wanted, and so people. I'm not sure what the restaurant cost is at, or what how much it costs for, say, if I were to go eat there, but people, I'm sure, are more willing to pay more to dine at those locations because it's more of a sentimental value
Mm-hmm.
versus, if you were to go to an artificial intelligence restaurant. Now, I guess, what do you think? Where do you stand with that claim?
I mean, again, it's really I don't think it's any more a question of like, do I want this to happen or do I don't? I think it's just a question of when it will actually happen because it's happening, you know? But I feel like, but again, I feel like that if I could make my own wish or whatever, I would prefer for specific industries to still remain with human bodies working in there and executing specific things, just because people really do like to, for instance, elderly people, retired people, just throwing out examples. They love to go to the post office because they know the post office lady is so nice and they have their little chat with her, you know, or like a little flower shop, on your corner or whatever. And you always go there every Monday because every Monday you go and see your mom and you just always grab like a little flower for your mom on your way from your house to the flower shop. You get me? Or like it's little details like that that make a community really a community, because this is why you chose to live somewhere where you live, because you love these interactions with these other humans. This is your jam. This is why you go to the bagel shop on the corner, because Susie is going to be there and you get to say hi to Susie, or you love going to a specific nail salon because Jenny's going to be there. And you're like, I'm going to go and see Jenny today because I'm going to get my nails done and I can talk to Jenny. Like, you know what I mean? And if we were to strip all of that away and just essentially put robots there that, yeah, I'm sure you can have conversations with them. I'm sure they're going to be intelligently programmed. I'm sure of all of that. But if I were to want to create a baby, I can't do that with a robot now, can I? I have to find another human compatible soulmate to do that with. And same with having me and you on this podcast, like there's no comparison doing this with you versus you being a robot, and you can ask same intelligent questions, which I'm even sure, not to be disrespectful, but probably even more other questions would this robot have that we didn't even talk about today. But is that really what makes me actually happy today? No, it makes me happy that I get to do this with you. Like I was looking forward to this podcast with Chef Ismael because this is my jam, you know? And so I don't know. I'm very old school. Like I'm a very old school soul, and I'm not trying to be, old minded or not going with the time. But I'm just also wanting to always implement that this is why I chose hospitality, because of these interactions, because of these people always come back for the people and the food and the service. Like it's a whole, it's a whole thing. Like it's a cycle. It's people, food, service, people, food, service. Like it's one of those three, and if you're lucky you get all three in one. But one of those three is why you go back all the time. And it might be in every place a different reason, but this is literally the three main keys why people choose to go back to an establishment. Because either they clicked with the bartender, or, the waitress, or the food was amazing and it never changes because the consistency is always the same and it's always the same prepared and it always tastes the same way amazing, or like you always love the view at the specific hotel where you go to. I always go in that same room because I just love the view and I love their amenities and I love their hotel. So I don't know. I'm not against it. I'm just saying, can both please exist in this world? Is that a possibility? Where we get the best from AI, but we get the best from humans still too. I don't know. I might be naive in this. I might be, maybe I'm not the right person to ask. Maybe, somebody that is maybe 10 years younger than I am would be like having a completely different idea about this than what I have, but I just know old school hospitality. That's what I grew up in. That's what I know. That's what really, I don't think any person in this planet cannot tell me that they really experienced hospitality like that and they walk out and say this was awful. No, nobody would say that. Everybody would say this was amazing, and that's not replaceable. It's not.
Oh man. Yeah, no, definitely. Good points. Good points. So I want to talk about, I guess I'm not saying, what, let me see, let me think about this before I even ask you this, because I want to be able to say this the proper way without
Okay.
it being sounding wrong. Um,
Okay.
okay, so sorry. There have been, so again, on my Instagram feed,
Mhm.
I will always get the majority of my time, a majority of my feed is going to be hospitality industry, and employee satisfaction, stuff like that, right?
Mhm.
And I want to get into the topic of exploitation because
Mhm.
that comes up. Say, like, let's say the Starbucks workers are, they're the baristas. They walk out because of unfair pay, right?
Mhm.
But they are making these custom drinks that are not even on the menu, but and they're just pushing them out, they're pumping them out, and I'm just like amazed how people can even think of these drinks and have these baristas make them.
Mhm.
I'm not sure what they get paid. So if anybody listening to this who is a barista, please let me know what the average pay is, but
Yeah.
um, in the comments below. Okay, so but if but I'm not sure what they get paid, but um, the line is insane. always insane to get a drink from there, right? And then so what happens is, from what I've heard, is that the baristas, some of them would get fired, and then they bring in a whole new team, and then they just retrain, and they come. I guess it becomes a cycle. Same thing with the
Mm.
Amazon workers, right? They walk out, and I heard that Amazon was going to be like, hey, you know what? Let's hire more employees and let them have their strike, and we'll continue to push operations forward in the name of customer satisfaction, right? So, with that being said, do you think the hospitality industry exploits its workers in the name of customer satisfaction?
Yeah, some do. Some for sure do, especially I feel like those that pay their employees a salary, they definitely get a little bit more. Um, the riff of that versus people that are on hourly, because they know, okay, this person's hourly, if we keep them too long it turns into an hour and a half, and no. But the people that are on salary, I think sometimes it happens quite often, especially in hospitality. But again, if you are understanding the world of hospitality, you know that even though your schedule says 4 o'clock, it will never be that time that says on your schedule, because this is a human related business. You don't know how long a person in your section will actually continue eating their meal, or if they're going to have another espresso or another, digestif after they're done eating. And they are allowed to, right? Because again, they come out to let loose. They come out to have a good time. So if you happen to be a waiter that works in the evening, and yes, it says your schedule ends at, let's say, 10 o'clock, there's cleaning afterwards. There's restocking. There's getting the restaurant ready for the next shift. Like the stuff like that is a little bit different in the world of hospitality. But I feel like sometimes it's being taken advantage of too, especially management positions. Like management positions, I think it can be a tricky thing, because again, they're all on salary, and everybody knows in the industry, if you are a manager, 10 hours is a no-brainer. Okay, that's a no-brainer, right? It's not a normal thing, like 8 hours with an hour break. Yeah, it's cute. No, it doesn't work like that, right? And we all know that, and we're okay with that. But if it goes beyond that, which does, then this is, I think, where we should really be fair enough to then either substitute, if that happens on regular basis. Like if my manager on consistent basis stays 12 hours happily, does a great job, I think it would be then our responsibility as owners to be like, look, like this person always shows up, they're never late, they're always here, they're always doing a great job. How about we give like an extra little bonus for when these hours went a little high, because there's always a cap on things. You get hired knowing, okay, you got to deliver 60, 70 hours per week. You already know that from the beginning. But like if it goes beyond that, then it should be compensated in either, at least please verbally somehow, some acknowledgement, some verbal thank yous, some verbal red carpets, or even better, like, a gift card, an extra check or bonus or something. But is that the case? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Is it sometimes often a no? Yeah, it happens. But, it's everybody's own decision to set boundaries and speak up and say, this is something I'm actually really okay with, and this is something I'm not, because I do have a life outside of this, and I know I'm doing a good job, and I know I'm delivering. So therefore, I do deserve this and this and this. But it takes, courage, and it takes knowledge, and it takes you putting your money where your mouth is. Because if you're just coming out of the gate saying, oh, I am this ba ba ba, but you don't deliver, then that's not a good idea, right? But if you know that you deliver what you say and you know what you're worth, then step up and say something in a kind, respectful way, I'm saying, right? Because I'm sure everybody is grateful for managers that do step up. But are they allowed to be compensated? Yes. Are they allowed to have time off? Yes. Are they allowed to have a life? Yes, they do. Maybe a little shorter life. than other people. And that's okay, because listen, you know what you're getting yourself into when you are a manager. You know what I mean? Like this, you just know. If you have 2 kids at home and you married, you probably do not want to be a restaurant manager. Not when your kids are under 5. You probably don't, because you will never be home. And your wife probably will leave you, or your husband. Or, so I'm saying you have to understand the industry and what it comes with, but saying all of that, it comes with so much privileges. It comes with you being educated, you being, you learn so many things. You get to learn about cultures. You get to meet these amazing, wonderful guests, and you work with cool people together. Like it's a give and take again. What are you willing to give up? What are you willing to take? Like you got to ask those questions yourself, to really be like, am I okay with this or am I not? I was okay for it for a while. And I know I was used in a sense. I know, because I stayed from 10 a.m. till 11 p.m. every single day, except for one day in the week for years. And it was no problem for me, but I was not married. I had no child. It was just me. Fine. I loved it. It was literally my life.
It's funny. You say, you said, like to you give and you take what you take, I guess, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in my mind, the first thing that popped up in my mind was something dumb, because it was pizza party, right? I give you 70 hours a week, I will get one pizza party for a year, and it was like a little little meme that I saw the other time, where you guys have been working so hard all year, keep up keep up the sales, and by the end of the year, we will have something special for each and every one of you guys. You go into the break room and it's a pizza, from Little
wow.
Caesars, and you get like Shasta Cola or something,
Yeah.
It's not even like, yeah, it's pretty funny, but
Yeah.
but the reality is that it happens, where you
Yeah.
exceed expectations and you get from it. You get a pizza party, and
Yeah.
and it sucks because at the end of the day, it's like you poured everything out, right? Or there was this company, where they exceeded $1 million in sales for this one store, and they got a cookie.
What?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, they got it. They ended up getting it. Was like a viral story. They got a
That's
cookie.
crazy.
It was like, I guess the employees felt like it was a slap to their face. They thought they were gonna get maybe
Yeah.
like, maybe a $200 bonus, something, like
Something.
it's out of the
But,
million, like what's 200, But I guess that
yeah.
was too much, and they got a cookie out of it. But I mean, if they didn't want it, I'll take it. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. No, I get it. And I mean, but that's the thing though, it really goes back to, just really understanding and respecting each other and respecting each other's craft. You know what I mean? Like, I need to respect you as my employer, and I need to be respectful of the tools that you're providing to me, like my trays and the glasses and the dishes and all of that. And I have to be really careful not to break them constantly. I mean, if it happens, then that's just what it is. But like, you want to be respectful, but the same way, you want to be respectful to your staff too. They show up, they're here, they work your dream. Matter of fact, they create your dream. They're executing it actually,
Yeah.
and for that they do deserve for you to take a moment and understand who they are and know their names and be grateful and be kind. And I'm not saying go and braid everybody's hair and have private coffee. It's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just saying understand that these people are really there for you. And if they wouldn't be there, you couldn't do what you do. But vice versa, like if you couldn't work in this restaurant or at this hotel, then you couldn't maybe live where you live because it maybe pays main of your bills, And so it really goes both ways. I think when we really are getting to the part of understanding that respect always goes in reciprocity, and it's really an energy exchange. and I give and I get, and you give and you get. Like, it's kind of like, in Germany, we say one hand reaches the other, right? And so if we do that to each other, then there shouldn't really be a problem, not even with transparent conversation, because people change, ideas change. Just because you hired me a year ago for, I don't know, 120 a year as a restaurant manager, that doesn't mean that in a year from now my needs don't change, or my ideas don't change, or the world around me doesn't change. What do we do now? I'm still helping you the same way with my full 100% that I did this entire year. But now life is what's happening. How can we sort this out with each other? I don't want to leave you. You don't want me to leave. I don't want to leave. But what can we do? And sometimes I feel
Yeah.
like these transparent conversations is really the missing part of so many things, because if we just learn to be more transparent and allow ourselves to speak in a kind, respectful, transparent way, so many things would just be so different. So many things would be so different, you know? But I think we're learning right now to jump over that hurdle where people are sick and tired of not speaking up, where they're not with it anymore, where they don't have to take things anymore as they used to. And I'm happy that it's getting to that part, as long as everything is always done with with a level of respect. You can say anything you want to say, but be kind, be mindful about it, like understand your tone makes the music, understand that your voice has power.
Yeah, no, the respectful dialogue and transparent communication
Hmm.
is essential to a good working relationship between employee and employer. And
Yeah.
I think that, there has to be more of that. I personally have had issues with that because, um, they're the ones who sign your paychecks, and the last thing you want to do is tell them that you need a day off or whatever because they're relying on you or the team is relying on you. But at the
Yeah.
same time too, you at the same time too, you need to have a boundary, right? Where you say, "Hey, please give me some time off." I've
Hmm.
had an employer where I would take 2 weeks off work, but I still get calls. Can you place this order? Can you do this? Can you do that? And I'm just like I'm in New York right now. I'm taking my vacation. I'm trying to, enjoy my
Right.
time. And here you are, you're still calling me. And, you know,
Right.
again, like you need to set that boundary, but at the same time, it's like for people like me, it's hard because you don't want to say no to the owner. You don't want to say no to the person who signs your checks, and you
Right.
want to be able to, do that. But at the same time, it's like you also need to respect my time that I give you all this time, I just need 14 days out of the
Yeah.
year. That's all I need, you know.
Yeah.
And so that's it was hard, but I mean, I guess I kind of overcame it, because at that time it got to a point where I was like, you know what, if you fire me, you fire me. Then whatever, I'll just friggin' move on. And it's not hard for me to look for another job. I can always get another job somewhere else with my experience and knowledge. Like
Mhm.
I'm not scared, But there's other employees who are a little like they're not as confident to say
Mhm.
things that need to be said in fear of retaliation, right?
Yeah. Or replacement.
And I get right, and I get a bunch of DMs from people from all over the world who would ask me, "How do you deal with toxic workplaces? How do you deal with a toxic manager? How do you deal with a toxic coworker?" And
Mm-hmm.
so it's one of those things where it's just like first of all, it's a it's a person to person, or it's a situation to situation basis, right? Not all situations can be answered with one simple answer. Another thing too is that as an employee, you know, if you're stuck in a toxic situation, you and it gets to a point where you're like not feeling good physically, and your body is starting to feel those toxins,
Right.
because you're, as you know, like, I think you mentioned this to me back when we were talking off camera, where your body tries to take those toxins out of negativity, and you feel that, and you just start to get sick, and you just spiritually, it affects you
Right.
physically, because it's that bad. And if it
Yeah.
gets to that point, then it's your fault at that point, because now you're punishing yourself and working in an environment like that, right? So instead of trying to fix the issue, maybe it's time for you to move on and look for another location where you won't have that feeling anymore, because you can put a band-aid on the problem, but it's not going to get fixed in the long run, right? Unless that toxic individual is no longer there, or the company itself is trying to fix it internally. But other than that, like, it's your job and your responsibility to remove yourself from that situation if it's that bad. So again, like, that to me is like probably one of my go-to answers, because people will explain to me how bad it gets, and it's just like, I'm
Mm-hmm.
sorry, I'm not there. Like, I can't
Right.
physically, I'm not your manager, I'm not your chef. I can't physically, stop the issue, or I can't not physically stop the issue, but I can't stop the issue because I'm not in the UK. I'm not in,
Right.
Mexico. I'm not in these
Right.
countries, right? I'm just like, this is what I would do if I were in your situation. But again, like, this is solely your decision. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just giving you my personal, um, I
What
guess,
you would do.
management.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And yeah,
Um,
exactly.
but
Hmm.
I wouldn't expect them to take my personal advice, because
Right.
it might not be the situation that they're in, or whatever it is, right? Um,
Yeah. But I feel
so
like also, with that, I feel like I want to add to that because, it's a lot of times, I mean, fundamentally, you have to understand what is more important to you. Is it your own sanity or is it your security? Right?
mhm,
Because fundamentally, that's really the question what this is about, right? Like, is it either my own sanity or is it my security of having an income? So that's one thing that you really need to kind of like ask yourself and figure out with your own self. But also, the other thing that I want to add to that is, that you just said, this toxic situation will never change until that toxic person or the toxic situation will be removed or remove itself. I want to add to that whenever you encounter with such situation, no matter if it's a situation, a person, a place, or whatever, you have to ask yourself why you are in this situation. Um, and are you toxic? Is really the other question that I would suggest to ask to
mhm,
the person. Because when we find ourselves in toxic situations is because we attracted those for some reason. I'm not saying it's your fault or their fault. I'm saying that there's something not resolved within inside of you that actually attracted you to have the situation enter your life. And the reason why it's entering is because it needs to be resolved inside of you. Because if you don't resolve it, the same situation will maybe be solved here because either this person leaves or you're leaving. But guess what? You will take that unresolvedness with you wherever you go. And it might be good for the first 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months, but trust it will come back. Why? Because it's unresolved in here. So I would suggest to whoever is asking such question to really bring them back to themselves and just be like, let me ask myself, why am I in this situation? What is happening inside of me that I am actually okay with being treated this way? Where is this coming from? Because it's not the only situation. It was just replaced by a situation that is unresolved, that had carried over. But where is the unresolved situation? Where did that happen? Where was this created? And it takes a lot of little bit self-deep work going into yourself, asking yourself questions, going back in your own timelines of remembering situations. But once you find the root, where it actually had started is really when it can be healed too. And then it won't occur anymore in your life, because now you understand why this need to happen again to you, for you to actually look at something to make it go away. You see, all these situations are just signs for us to really be like, hey, hello, there's something. Can you look at yourself? Can you dig deeper? There's something going on. And you see all these people and places and situations, those are just billboards for us to be like, hey, look, I'm showing you a mirror, but really this is actually coming from you. I'm just mirroring what you do, and this is tough for us to hear, because people are like, you think I want to have a bad life? You think I want to have a negative situation? No, you don't. But clearly there's something what's inside of you that is attracting such situation to enter. So find that in you to make it completely go away, because then it doesn't matter with who you interact or with what situation you're in, because it won't affect you anymore. It won't rattle you anymore, because it's healed and it's dealt with. Sorry, that was a little on another.
No, that was perfect, because that can be one of those things where the toxic person could be asking me that question, right? And maybe I didn't even look at it that way, because I'm just like, well, I'm looking at it from what you're telling me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I can't get the other person's side of the story, because they're not communicating with me. But at the same time, I'm not your HR, I'm not your chef. I can't mediate this situation to make it better for the both of you,
Right.
So maybe it'd be totally different if I was your chef, but at this point, like, I can only give you advice from what you're telling me. And if you're giving me that, but if you're telling me that information, I'm gonna take it with what you got, and that's it, because you're absolutely right. And I know that nobody's perfect. We all have our faults, and so maybe that situation might have been a misunderstanding, a miscommunication between both employees, or between whatever it is. But I think that's pretty much where people really need to see is like, okay, well, maybe what did I do wrong? If you speak to yourself honestly and you say, well, honestly, it wasn't me, it was said person who maybe had made a joke that I didn't feel too comfortable about, and this is what it is, like, then I guess it's not me, it's the culture of the team, and if the culture of the team is not aligned with my beliefs,
then I got to remove
time for me to move on.
Exactly. Right? But I think that's the difficult part, to really be so fair to yourself also, because again of the security aspect, right? Because you need this job, you need to have this income. And what would this mean again? You have to start all over again, but in a sense, it's really like, again, what is more worth to you, your sanity or your security? Sometimes you can't have both. I'm not saying it's never. There's often situations where you have both, but if you had to pick, which one do you choose? Because your inner peace is priceless. It's no money can pay that to you, your inner peace. And if you had inner turmoil and you already feel anxiety having to enter this workspace or this establishment, and that it's going to be another day of, like, for instance, bullying or unfairness or disrespect or anything that really just doesn't make you feel good, then you really need to have enough self-care and self-respect to be like, you know what, I'm not okay with this, and I don't need to deal with this because I am not acting that way. So I do have the birthright to expect that nobody acts towards me also not that way. But, it takes a strong personality. It takes a strong courage person to step up for themselves, because nobody will step up for you like you step up for yourself. Nobody, so you got to be your own advocate first. And I'm not saying it's got to be my way or the highway. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying, like, I do matter in this world because I exist. And I know my talents and I know my not so much talents, and I know what I'm mastering, and I already know what I had mastered, because I can be fair and honest with myself. And if you have that, then you can really stand there and say, this is my boundary. I'm not okay with that because it doesn't sit well with me. It doesn't serve my soul. It doesn't serve my purpose. It doesn't make me happy. And it doesn't feel good simply. Alone that. Because, we're always going away from the feeling part. It's always about this logical, rational thinking, which is great, but like tone back in your own body. How does it make you feel when you enter? Do you feel good? Or do you feel like your body's getting tense and you have a headache and you're like, oh no, not again. I don't want to. Oh, it's like 8 hours. Oh, that's not a nice feeling to have every day,
Yeah. All right. Well, Žana, where can we find you?
You can find me on LinkedIn, Žana DeVine. You can find me on Instagram, Žana Hospitality. You can find me. Oh, I launched a podcast. I want to put that out there. R&R, Resilience and Rebirth. I'm always up for amazing stories. I was so privileged for you to be my guest. And you can find that on any platform, anywhere out there. And the easiest way to get in touch with me is just to contact Chef Ismael. He has most of my info, so he's happy to share.
Yeah, I will actually. So ask. So yeah, no, I sincerely appreciate you taking the time
Me
to speak
too.
with me. It's almost a 2-hour podcast, which these are like the conversations I really enjoy having, especially with you on or off camera. And so hopefully we could do a part 2 to, another interview on this, because I have so many more questions I have for you. And I'm extremely excited to be able to continue on this conversation. But I mean, if there's anything else you'd like to add on or anything like that, I guess, just let me know now.
Yeah. I mean, I'm grateful that I was here. Thank you so much. I think this was a wonderful conversation, and I'm just really happy that we have people like you in this world that help and that shed light and that are light to others and that help educate and acknowledge and lead. And I'm grateful for you. I'm happy that a team is around you that can work with you and learn from you. And that I love your food. I think you're an absolute artist when it comes to making food. And I'm happy that we had this opportunity to do this together. And part 2, 3, 4, 5, I'm coming. You just send me an invite. I'm here. Anytime.
No, for sure. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for taking the time to listen. If you've enjoyed this conversation, please take the time to subscribe, like, and comment. And remember, stay passionate, stay focused, and keep moving forward with a purpose.